Okay, well, I think we're going to get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Liz Lorbeer, and I'm going to be your moderator today. Welcome to the 20th annual Lively Lunch for the Charleston Conference. Next slide. Thank you. Some housekeeping before we get lively. This session is recorded. There will be time for question and answers after the session. I ask that you please submit your questions via the Zoom chat during the session, and I'll make note of your questions. And then during Q&A, I will call on you. If you could please mute yourself so we don't hear your conversation, I'd appreciate it. Raise your hand to participate in the discussion following the presentations. And then last, feel free to chat with other participants, and attendee chat will be on Pathables. So let's meet the group. Again, I'm Liz Lorbeer, and I'm at Western Michigan University, Homer Stryker MD School of Medicine. And with me today, I have Rena Lubker at Northwestern University Galter Health Sciences Library. Jean Kudinas could not be with us today, but we will talk about that a little bit more, about where you can find more information about her presentation. Matthew No, who is at Harvard Medical School. Rena Lubker, Dr. Rena Lubker, who's at the Medical University of South Carolina. Katina Strauch from the Charleston Library Conference, founder and convener. And we're really excited to have you at our 20th annual lunch. And Nicole Gallo, Rittenhouse Book Distributors, and a special thank you today to Rittenhouse for supporting another year of our Lively Lunch. So today, this is our session objectives. There's a no holds bar discussion about the best practices and predictions for the future. We'll look at ripple effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the health sciences collections. We'll review some steps for enduring a social justice focused anti-racist balanced collection. We'll discuss challenges libraries face with involvement in and support of their institutional global health initiatives. And again, conference founder Katina Strauch has agreed to join the 20th anniversary session and will be invited to join the conversation. And Nicole Gallo from Rittenhouse will provide observations about vendor partnership. So let's begin with the industry update from Rena Lubker.
Hi there, everyone. I'm thrilled that we're at the 20th, although I'd like us to be on site sitting at round tables and eating a boxed lunch. I'm like a mother hen. I was around when we first gathered the first group, and I want to acknowledge and thank Katina Strauch, who in one of her first careers was actually a medical librarian, and she's been very supportive of having us meet as a group during these conferences to kind of filter things through our own glasses. So on this slide, my role this year is to talk a little bit about the handout that I develop each year. I'm not going to be a speaker or a panelist, just a lurker, but I'm sharing my handout. It's in the Pathable schedule, and I also deposit it in my institutional repository using the links there. And the handout has 3 parts. The first part lists our panelists, links to their profiles, although they also listed biographies in the conference site, I'm sure. And I want to wish Jean well. Jean, at the last minute, found out she wasn't able to join us because of health issues. But in the handout, there is a link to an article she wrote for the Duty Collection Development Monthly that was released just last month in October. And I think it will at least give you an idea of some of the things she would have shared at our session today. So beyond the profiles, also at the third part, I took a trip down memory lane and tracked down all the Against the Grain reports and the reports, the expanded abstracts from our first 19 lively lunches. So if you'd like to take a visit down memory lane, I think you'll find we've covered a lot of territory over the years, from open access to clinical tools and so much more. The middle section is reflected in the slide, the word cloud. I don't have to tell any of you that from the last conference, those who were there through March, it was pretty much business as usual. And then starting around March, my goodness, our job titles in collection development and management just got turned on a heel around as our users, researchers, clinicians, educators, students all had different needs and demands of us. And our relations with publishers took on a new light as well. So take a look at the handout. You'll see, I hope I captured some of the anniversaries, some of our publishers and initiatives. Happy birthday, Medical Heritage Library, you're 10 now. I tried to capture, instead of by month as I normally do with other development handouts, this time I tried to capture some of the themes. And of course, COVID will be a big one. Preprints and preprint servers, we can't say enough about how those are trending at this conference and in our health sciences world. Another topic and theme, of course, is suddenly a lot of our medical humanities curricula and generally our programs focused on social justice. But I know that Matthew will address that during his remarks. So all in all, it's just a snapshot. And I know that some people will say, I already knew everything, but maybe there'll be a few things you want to revisit again or hadn't heard about. And I know that I haven't captured everything. Even before this session, I found out about changes at Rittenhouse that I had kind of not realized. So congratulations, Rittenhouse, as you move to your next generation of providing us with content. So I'm hoping that we'll meet again for a 21st. And I welcome all of you. I thank all of our panelists, our respondents, and all of you who are joining us today. Let's have a lively discussion. Talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Ramuna. I remember our first lively lunch, and we both were like 10 years old. So we're going to go to our first topic, which would have been Jean, but she's not with us today. So we're going to move along. We're just telling you to please see the handout. Our second topic today is with Matthew No. He's going to talk about social justice focused and anti-racist balanced collections in the health sciences.
Hi, everybody. Let me start this stopwatch here. Good to see everyone, sort of, via Zoom. Interesting that this is the 20th one of these, but it's actually my first time, and my first time attending Charleston at all. So it's a strange time to be coming to the first one, but it's been good so far. My name's Matthew No. My pronouns are he, him, or he, his. I'm the lead collection and knowledge management librarian at Harvard Medical School. You can find me all over social media at Know the Matt if you're one of those kind of people like me who live online too much. Especially the past week, I don't recommend scrolling endlessly. It's bad for you. Advice I don't take on my own. So I'm going to briefly kind of talk about how we're trying to address racism with the health sciences collection here. This is really a very brief sort of start to this conversation, and I'll talk about how it really can't be the end towards the end of my conversation. So next slide. So why this now? It's not a conversation that just came out of nowhere. Hopefully your library has been having conversations about racism in your collections for years. Hopefully that you've been paying attention to diversity, equity, belonging training, and all of that. But this year, earlier on in the pandemic, May, June, after we saw several people, murdered and abused by the police, and with not much repercussion, and the country attempted to take to the streets and rectify that to mixed success. But this time we finally started seeing some of our more conservative medical organizations speak up and say something. The American Medical Association put out a statement saying that police brutality must stop. The American Public Health Association, who's been commenting about this for years, reaffirmed that racism is a public health problem and things have to change. We did finally get something from the American Dental Association later as well, also calling for changes. And medical library organizations spoke up. Other library organizations spoke up. To what degree those statements are going to impact any changes in these organizations remains unclear. There's concerns about them being performative, that we have to actually make structural system-wide changes, not just in hiring, but in culture of our organizations for any of this to actually mean so much. But so when all of this was happening, I had a bad weekend. I was like, there has to be something that me, just as a collections librarian, can do minimally. And so I spent an entire workday throwing together this statement that you can maybe sort of read. You can find it on Countway's website still, in a collection of readings, books, journals, curricula, resource guides, etc., that we threw up on the Countway website, in the hopes that it would spark some conversation, that some people would use some of these resources that maybe are saying something, would encourage others to say something as well. And based on feedback that I've heard in the past 6 months, more people did say something because they saw this. People reached out and emailed me saying that they used it as a base for their own guides and for having conversations with students. At last count, it was the most viewed page on Countway's website this year. And so that's encouraging. Yeah, so next slide. So briefly, why this matters. This is one of those things I harp on constantly, is libraries are not neutral. No information is really neutral. So we're always taking a stance, whether it's for change or for the status quo. And we have to use the fact that we're a trusted institution to take responsible stances and provide education and places for these hard conversations to happen. And it's particularly important in this moment as we're all watching people not trust election counts. And yeah, I won't go into that too much. But we're also being, demanded by our communities to take stances and to build collections and change our institutional practices. In particular, here at Harvard, the students recently petitioned the school to change one of our academic society names. It was the Oliver Wendell Holmes Society, and now it's going to be the William Augustus Hinton Society, named for one of the first Black graduates of Harvard Medical School. And so this is really a student-driven effort where we have to respond to what they're asking us for, and to meet them where they are and their needs. And especially if they feel that other parts of the institution aren't taking this on, we can be front running and leading the way. And then, as maybe you've seen this year, dermatology has been a particular subject for the problems of medical publishing this year. That there's lack of representation of different skin colors. And that leads to poor education and misdiagnosis and all sorts of long-term poor health effects. And so something for us to think about is, how can we encourage the creation of better, more equally represented textbooks and databases and tools. I think I just saw an email yesterday that Visual DX is adding a lot of new skin tones to their platform. And I know others are working on it as well. It's just that one just saw an email about it. But then, like, how many of our core texts are written by solely people in the US, in the UK, Germany? What voices and different perspectives on medicine are we missing in our collections by sticking to our core title lists, which I know faculty are using, and there's a reason they're core, but we should always push back against this idea that there's only one good key title. And then, in a second, you'll see some titles I'm talking about here that go beyond our just medical text. And for that, we're kind of the primary library for a lot of our community. How many medical students have time to go visit their public library? And especially right now when, we're all still under COVID procedures, we can be a place for them to find other texts beyond just their textbook. So the next slide. So these are some examples of what I highlighted in this project. How to be an anti-racist being one of the big ones for the year. The new Jim Crow is a little older, but it's pretty foundational. Black Men in a White Coat has been a popular book club, common reading kind of title for a few years. I think there's even a reading of it happening with the Medical Library Association, or it already did. Reproductive Injustice is another big key title. That's one of the things I got a lot of feedback about the list I put up, is that there needed to be more titles and suggestions for reproductive justice. And I'm working on building that collection for us now, because we really didn't have a lot, but there's plenty out there. And of course, if you know anything about me, I'm all about comics. So I have to include March in this, by the late John Lewis, Nate Powell, and Andrew Aiden. I have all three of these titles in our graphic medicine collection. While the series doesn't specifically deal with any medical topics, the civil rights movement is really kind of central to how we discuss healthcare and pretty much everything in the US. So it's important to have there. And the 1619 Project is a digital tool that we should encourage engagement with. If you still can. I know this has been a target of a lot of misinformation and efforts to undermine the project by our current, political administration. But I encourage you to engage with it and encourage faculty to take a look at it. It can be a great way to have these conversations. So most of these are things that you might not include in your medical library typically. They have a place, especially right now. It's important that our students, our faculty, our whole community is understanding of the social, cultural history of where they're practicing, because that impacts how their patients are living, the kind of access to health they have, how much they're going to trust or distrust the medical institution. It's all relevant. So next slide. And so some potential roadblocks, some bigger than others. Internal politics is a big one. So you're going to find admin, libraries, faculty who don't think it's the library's place to be, stirring the pot, having these conversations, hopefully not at your institution. I didn't run into any trouble posting this, even though I kind of just went and did it without asking permission first. And then, title availability is another concern. As we've been adapting to this ebook first, like fully gung-ho now, even though we've been kind of moving that direction. I found a lot of difficulty in getting ebooks for some of these titles. And so I turned to the Boston Public Library system and included links to their ebook holdings, because some of the more like popular reads, trade titles aren't necessarily in the platforms we use all the time in an academic medical setting. And so it's a chance for us to partner with the public library nearby. Like if our students can't go there in person, they can still sign up for a library card online and they can still access those materials. So we can share materials and share programming once we're able to do that sort of thing again. I didn't have much trouble getting things in print except for How to Be an Anti-Racist. Getting new copies of that earlier in the year was a struggle because everyone bought it and it was out of print. I think we're past that now. Some concern about the library's reputation. Like, is the library already a place people feel safe and able to have these conversations, or are you going to have to build this out of nothing? Like, Maybe students don't feel comfortable in the library, hopefully not, but maybe some students don't feel comfortable in the library yet. So how are you gonna ensure that this is done in a safe, accepting way in which you're not gonna harm your reputation, or you're not going to create a negative experience for people interacting with the library, because we don't want that. I mentioned before, there are always going to be these calls for balance and neutrality, which can be very loaded, status quo, let's keep things where they are and don't rock the boat terms. I encourage pushing back on that when you can safely. Don't lose your job, especially right now, but like do what you can. And the big criticism that I have for myself with this whole project is, do we really need another book list? They're helpful, they have a place. Encouraging people to read and learn new experiences is important, but this can't be the only thing that we do as a library. It's a first step. Next steps should be internal looking, like our keynote speaker yesterday was talking about. It has to go beyond just the diversity inclusion plan. Think more systematically, like how are you going to change your organization at a foundational level? How are you going to ensure that people are comfortable and safe in your library? How are you going to ensure that staff are comfortable and safe in your library? Because that's not always the case. So yeah, the next slide. Yeah, the last one. So thank you all for listening. Here's some suggested resources that I just quickly threw up that I've been using. There's a lot more of this out there. And I'm happy to email slides if need be. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And slides will be available later on for this presentation as well. So next, we're going to move on to Dr. Rena Lubker, and she's going to talk about challenges libraries face with involvement in and support for their institution's global health initiatives. Dr. Lubker, you're muted.
Of course. Thank you. Hi, my name is Rena Lubker, and I am a librarian from the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. I can't wait to welcome you all back in Charleston. I really miss having this in person. I am also the MLA Allied Representative to the Association of Health Information and Libraries in Africa, AHILA. And as an MLA program, which is an MLA program with representatives in different organizations. And I am just going to talk about a few points about libraries globally to encourage conversation. And as we all know, COVID-19 has impacted us all in so many different ways. It's impacted our budgets, and with that, also staffing in libraries. And it's also impacted access to libraries. Our students still need to access libraries, but they can't access them like they used to in the olden days. And COVID has also impacted our wellness. We are so stressed out, both at home as well as at work. And the budget cuts and the access problems also add to the stress in the staffing and just not knowing where we're gonna be. And in addition to that, goodwill has also been impacted. And I see goodwill impacted negatively between sometimes students and librarians, because there are some libraries that are still not open, but librarians are actually going to work, and then students can't understand why they can't access the library or go to places in the library because they can see the librarians in the library. And again, travel has been impacted so much. And now we're having all these virtual conferences, which have their own pros and cons. And yesterday I listened to Tani, I think, and Eleanor talk yesterday about, the virtual conferences and the pros and cons. But we are resilient and we can deal with a lot of things. Next slide, please. Libraries have come up with different solutions, as you know, because each library is different. And I've seen, talking to librarians globally, a lot of libraries have limited number of sections that are open to people so that they can social distance. And a lot of them have closed, like their cafes. Our library has closed our cafe in the library, which was actually a favorite place of mine to be. And just depending on where you are, a lot of us has been hit with even like circulating our collections. And so libraries that did not depend a lot on digital resources and still depend on print books, that's been quite, a problem. And some people who can do it have actually changed to digital collections, but as you know, that's really expensive. Especially this problem with a lot of libraries in low resource countries. It's just an obstacle that's really hard to surmount. A lot of people in North America and Europe, and in some countries in Africa, but not all of them, people can actually work from home, and some libraries have even using technology to deal with COVID. And I found this, and I thought that was really interesting. There was a library in Saudi Arabia where they're using facial recognition technology to control who comes into the library. And I'm not exactly sure how they do that, but I find that really interesting. And using technology also in talking with a librarian from Lodz in Poland, she was telling me about how they have intelligent book lockers that students can use to check in and check out books. And when the books come in, they sanitize them before they can be checked out to other people, because they really have a big collection of print books. And but a lot of libraries, with the librarians that I talk with in Africa, have not been able to close because they just, they have problems with the internet. It's just not widely available. And some of these countries also, they have problems with power. So when they don't have power like all day long. And so when they don't have power, they don't have internet either. But the libraries, because the health libraries are usually in like hospitals, near medical schools, they have generators so they can have electricity there. And that's why they have to go to work and actually be open. And my friend who works at the virtual library that's housed in Cote d'Ivoire, they have a staff of 5 people, but because of COVID, they now have a lot of traffic. And so just having 5 people in there, working with this collection, it's been really difficult, because their library actually is open to anybody, and it's in both French and English, so that it can actually help a lot of people. But they haven't increased their staff. So that's been a huge problem living there. Next slide, please. But a lot of the African libraries, they have really, since they're open, they've really tried hard to have sanitation stations and hand washing stations. And the hand washing stations are not like the hand station washing that you might think about, that you have seen maybe in North America or in Europe. This is an example of a hand washing station at the University of Bamenda Library in Cameroon, which it's not, I mean, it's good that they have a hand washing, station, but they have to continuously add water into the bucket to make sure that it works. Next slide, please. So, but it's really nice that libraries have been sharing a lot of health information with COVID. And there are libraries that, one library in Brazil, actually, they share a page where they track health legislation, that everybody can have access to the health legislation in Brazil. And there's also a clinical information portal that shares a lot more information to help people so they know whether what they can do to keep healthy, as well as the World Health Organization. Their virtual health library is really working very, very active. And here in America, we know the Research for Life grant has now gone completely virtual, so that a lot more people can actually attend the training that's provided through the Research for Life grant. And there are a lot of other also libraries, and I'm sure at your libraries you're offering a lot of free webinars, and I've seen a lot of them also just by belonging to EHIL. I see a lot of EHIL, which is the European Association of Health Information Library. A lot of free webinars that are helpful to us to just keep us all together, because this, like I said, it's hit us so much that we just don't know what's going on and where we're gonna be in. Nobody really knows what's gonna happen, like, next year, for example. And a lot of libraries in Europe, here in the US, and in some countries in Africa, are using social media to just share more health information and building up networks to help each other. Next slide, please. And well, actually, before I even go to this slide, I also wanted to just show a few examples, talk about a few examples of how libraries are sharing all this information. Like the Zimbabwe Library Association in Africa have a page that they share a whole lot of international experience and webinars that can help, and as well as define points for advocacy during this time. And in Puerto Rico, the Association of Librarians of Puerto Rico has also launched a campaign around misinformation, especially because that's a big thing, the misinformation. Some people actually think there's medication that can cure COVID, and so they don't have to wear a mask or do other things to prevent COVID because there's that medication that can cure you easily. So they are trying to share that information so that everybody knows what the real information is out there, and not, do all those things that might not be so helpful. But really heartwarming to me is the public libraries that are really working to bring people together during this time. Some public libraries have turned their spaces into food banks where people can drop food and come and grab some food. And I was talking to a librarian in Kansas who all their libraries near where she lives, they've all turned into food banks. And in Canada, it's the same thing. Also, some public libraries have turned into food banks to share food and information as well. And in San Francisco, there was one public library that actually transformed to a child care facility for frontline workers. And in Toronto and some other areas, also they turned the public library into migrant service places. So migrants can go and get service since the actual offices were closed. And some of them actually we're offering laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots to local homeless shelters. Next slide, please. So that's just a picture of a library, public library in Toronto that was closed and was turned into a food bank. Next slide. So post-COVID, what's gonna happen? We all know that we're going to deal with this for a while. In fact, life has actually changed for everyone all over the world. So where do we go from here? And I was really glad to hear about this COVID-19 Safer Spaces project, where librarians are teaming up with architects to design library spaces that are usable, but also conducive to social distancing, so that we can continue to exist, but be in a safer, area. And some IFLA also, they were talking about working to modify restrictive licensing and pricing of ebooks so that more libraries can afford ebooks, and also so that most students can benefit from using those ebooks. And licensing where it's not as restrictive, where most students can actually access the same books instead of having just maybe 3 concurrent users at a time. And the European Association of Health Information and Libraries, EHIL, also sent out a survey, and I don't know how many people actually saw this survey. They sent it specifically to health libraries to gauge the response to COVID-19 and to get ideas from librarians on how to move forward. So, because we know, this is really a huge problem, because is everybody going to have access to digital libraries? What is going to happen to print books? And if we're still circulating print books, how do you make sure that they're sanitized for the next person, to use that book? And are we really prepared to redefine and broaden our role as librarians? This really makes me think of the reskilling movement that Tony, again, and Elena talked about yesterday. And just really a lot of thoughts. And I'll just end with words from Professor Kodzker, the rector of Medical University of Lodz in Poland. He says, "We have a long and challenging period ahead of us. Following the epidemic, fear and fatigue. It is also a trial period, a real hard test of who we are and how we cope. Let us be together." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rena. I always learn a tremendous amount from you. Thank you, Matthew and Ramuna. We're next going to go to the respondents. And our first respondent is Katina Strauch, who is the Charleston Library Conference founder.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I am a dinosaur. I graduated from library school in 1975, and I became a first medical librarian. That was my first job in 1980. So things were so different back then that y'all wouldn't even understand. I remember that there was no way to search at all. You had to pay somebody offline. You had to make an appointment with the reference librarian to search the literature. There was BRS and other services you could use, and they were very expensive. When I wasn't allowed to do anything because I wasn't trained enough. I remember searching for verification of interlibrary loans and Science Citation Index when it was not online, it was only in print. And if you've ever seen small print, just look at those things. I mean, you can't read them. That was the best verification of interlibrary loans. anyway, I remember the reference desk. My boss had to come out and help me when all the big doctors came in with their staff behind them, because she was afraid I would screw up. So she had to come make sure that I didn't give them the wrong answer. I mean, so things have changed so much. And I think collaboration, like John Palfrey said, and the fact that we need to think big is important for us to do. I mean, yes, there are a lot of bad things out there, but there are also a lot of good things, and librarians have done a lot of them. So I think we need to think big. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for speaking, and keep our medical libraries alive and well.
Thank you so much, Katina. And a bunch of us remember the colorful Science Citation Index volumes in -10 or -20 font. It might be why I now have readers. I'm next going to move on to Nicole Gallo, who's the Executive Director at the Rittenhouse Book Distributors.
Great, well, thank you. And I promise to be brief so we can get on to our lively discussion here this afternoon, which the lunch was founded on. But happy to have everyone here, and certainly everyone who preceded me really gave us a lot to think about. You know, I was jotting down a few notes, and a couple of the big things that came to mind was sparking some good conversations and making sure that you have those conversations with your vendor partners. So as a vendor, I'm uniquely situated in that I work with a lot of the health sciences publishers. And there are a lot of solutions out there right now. A lot of things are being offered, many of which are free. So it talks to, you know, one of the big concerns, and especially during COVID, with budgets and access. So that is one of the good things about e-content, is that it opens up access much more freely and easily, even if it's only for a short term until you get everyone back in your libraries. So ask your vendors what they have to offer. Have those conversations. You might be surprised. Take advantage of those partnerships. You have been great customers to all of your vendors for years, and they value just as much as Rittenhouse values your partnership. And you know, ask them, you know, what they think, what some of the solutions are out there as you are trying to navigate these waters during this period of pandemic. I think I agree that we're in this for a while. And Rena mentioned that it's going to be a trial period, and why not take this time to try something new and partner with your vendors to see what might work for you. So there's a lot of solutions out there, and I do urge you to spark those conversations and talk with your vendor partners. With regards to equity, I have a unique view being a distributor, watching all of the different product that is available, the title availability from publishers that are coming into distribution channels that you have access to. So there is a lot out there already. Matthew shared some of that with us. There are many titles that are very specific to health sciences. So again, go to your vendors and find out if they have collections that address equity, or if they have future plans. One of the things that we have found through the years is that when librarians ask for things, that demand drives availability. So don't be afraid to voice your needs and to let your vendor partners know, whether they're publishers or aggregators, what you're seeking for your equity collections. You'll be surprised at how much is out there, but also that how willing vendors are to listen to put those collections together for you. Once you purchase those collections, strive for integration. So, you know, I think Matthew talked about this a little bit during his talk, but you want to have those equity titles integrated throughout your collection. It's fine to have them as a separate collection, but not only as a separate collection. So keep that in mind as you're looking at your equity collections and what's available. You know, it's important that you strive for that integration. You know, it's an internal and an external thing with regards to equity. So I'll just leave you with the fact that, you know, vendor partners are here for you, And, if you're struggling with something, reach out. A lot of us have formed relationships over the years. So we're not only personal relationships, but we have good business partnerships. And I think together we can have some of these conversations and think big, as Katina said, and think about how maybe this pandemic and this time is giving us an opportunity to change and maybe change for the better. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Liz, and we can get on with our conversations.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So as a reminder, while we're going to get lively in just a few moments here, please use the Q&A Zoom chat box to submit a question. And that will then be a part of raising your hand to participate in the discussion. I am really excited. We have at its top 104 participants, but right now we have 93 participants. So I just asked if you want to raise your hand, put that in the chat box that you would like to go, and I will call on you and you can unmute yourself. I want to thank you for joining us today before we sign off. Another reminder that this session is being recorded. And I really want to thank our vendor partners that have joined us today. And another shout out to Rittenhouse for sponsoring this event and allowing us to have Nicole with us today, and all of our speakers as well. So go ahead, please use the chat box. We have our first question that's come in, and that is for Rena. Besides Research for Life, which is not tied to any one institution, what are medical schools with global health programs in North America doing these days?
You might need to unmute, Rena.
I did. I have unmuted now. Sorry.
It's okay.
I actually would like to hear from other health sciences librarians actually answer this question for me.
Okay.
What are you all doing at your institutions?
While we have people typing in the chat box, this is Liz. I'm going to share with you that, even though at our medical school, we can't go to Madagascar or Peru right now, just because of a travel ban, we are really just continuing to talk about tropical medicine, which is in global health initiatives at our school. We have interest groups with the faculty and students. And so I think that's kind of keeping that alive for us while we can't actually go serve in places that we want to either go on missions or serve a rotation outside of the US. I think just talking about it, keeping it alive, keeping our research alive is really important right now, in publishing as well. And one of our faculty members just published a tropical medicine book. And I think, when people say you published a tropical medicine book in Michigan, I think that you can do this work anywhere in the world and be successful. Well, I don't see anything in the chat box yet, so I'm going to just go to the next question here. I'm going to go on. I made some questions here about for you, Matthew. What books have really circulated and resonated outside the library? Has there been one particular topic on racism or on health disparities that is just based on the books that you did show us that you think like, gosh, you should really just make sure that you have this book and you make it part of discussions?
Yeah, so I know that we bought as many extra licenses as we could reasonably do for how to be an anti-racist, because every day I was in and getting notices that there were turnaways. And that's with the ebook. And since this year, but more traditionally, like the past couple of years, it's hard to keep March on the shelf too. That one's pretty much always in circulation. And, you know, I'm a big fan of, I really want to have a discussion with students using Your Black Friend and Other Strangers by Ben Passmore. It's a comic collection that Ben's got a great sense of humor that he uses to kind of like hit you in the face with what the problem is. I don't have like the stats in front of me of how well it's circulated, but I do know that it would be one that our students in particular, given like, I don't want to call anyone young because I'm fairly young still too, but like it's something that will resonate well with this generation compared to, and it's a quick read compared to a lot of these other heavy, more academic, historical texts that are important, but when you're already studying and reading 46 hours, 48 hours a week, you need something a little lighter.
Thank you so much. We had a question come in from Will Olmsted, and he says, in general, he appreciates the zero increase for the renewals for this fiscal year. And so I think many of us do. I know I do. But he would like to know if we are facing whopping cost increases in 2022 and beyond as content providers continue to need revenue. And I don't know, Nicole, if you want to take on this question as a vendor, and publishers or vendors, if you're on this call and you would like to, put something in the chat box, that would be great as well.
Sure, absolutely. I'll kick this off. Again, as an aggregator, we are talking with our publishing partners, every single day and talking about their offerings, whether it be electronically or in print. And they are very aware of what is going on with budgets. And I think the medical library community has done an excellent job of communicating, where things stand and what the struggles are. And based on my interaction with all of our publishing partners, I feel that they are not going to suddenly try to make up the fact that they held the pricing this year and just lop it into next year. I think they're all watching cautiously how 2020 and into 2021, what is going on, what type of crises you're facing with your budgets. And they're very aware that things need to be somewhat held status quo, because you're having to face these decisions with budget cuts, what to keep, what not to keep. And every single one of them wants to be on the keep list. So I think, as we do too at Rittenhouse. So I think we're all really aware of how important that is to you. Rittenhouse recently did a survey. Some of you may have received it with regards to ebook pricing, and resoundingly, what came back was that less expensive ebook collections were at the top of the list of interest. And we're just ebooks, we're not journals. But so, we heard you loud and clear as a vendor, and we're working to be able to provide, affordable solutions going forward, especially into 2021. But I do know the publishers, and talking with them, they're all, right now, they're trying to do their budgets for 2021, and they all have realized, the situation that everybody's in due to COVID and due to what's going on with university enrollments, and how that all trickles down, whether you're a hospital librarian or an academic librarian.
Thank you so much for that response. We're going to Terry's question, and she would like to know how many of us are using Unsub and how successful that you have found it to date. And Ramuna did mention that there was a session on Unsub, and I too, unfortunately, missed it the other day. So I'll be watching the recording. And I recently learned of Unsub, and it's funny. For many years, I just don't like the word cancellation, so I would always call it unsub. So I think it has the appropriate name. So for those of you that did go to the session or have unsub, if you want to answer the chat box or get a hold of Terry, I would really suggest that you do that all. Ramuna, I don't know if you want to add something real quickly there before we go to the next question.
I think it may especially be partnering with or resonate with institutions that have open access mandates and transformative agreements. It all seems to be so connected that looking at unsub stats without those other pieces being bought into at your institution, I don't know. So that I have more questions than I have answers, but I'm just raising those thoughts.
Thank you very much. And I just want to go back. I wanted to let you know that Elizabeth Leonard over at the AAAS Science says that they do have flat pricing for 2021. So thank you very much for putting that in the chat box. We're going to move on to Ryan Rafferty. And he says, has anyone forged successful cost sharing partnerships with hospital clinics for clinical point of care resources, such as UpToDate, Dynamed, etc.? And if so, where did the conversation begin and what level of admin? I don't know if one of our panelists want to take on that question.
Jean talked a little bit about hospital mergers last year, but I'm presuming the question is, nothing has changed between the academic and the clinical partner. It's not a case where suddenly there's growth.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not sure. So maybe the person who asked the question might want to kind of set the scene a little more.
Sure. And Will Olmsted, he says that his teaching, well, at his institution, the teaching hospital has reimbursed the cost of UpToDate for several years. And I would say that's the true at my medical school, that the hospitals pay for the residents and the clinicians who produce RVUs to have access to UpToDate and at our institution. And I think many institutions have very interesting ways of passing money back and forth. And I know that is an area that is a little bit stressful for us, especially right now with many hospitals under duress of not having the budgets that they need to move forward. And so that is, I think, Ryan and everybody else, something that we have to kind of pay attention to. And then Andrea McClellan, sorry, she says the session on unsub was excellent and very in-depth. So definitely take a look at that. Let me see here. Any other questions that have rolled in that I may have missed? Okay. We have 2 more minutes before the session does end. And maybe if you had a library genie and the library genie could give you anything, what might that be? Would that be maybe a larger budget, more FTE, better access to certain collections? And so I'm kind of curious with the remaining number of participants, if you could be granted one wish in this very unusual year that we're in. There's 74 participants. What might that be?
I'll jump in and answer. So for me, I'm on the more FTE wagon. Like any of the cool projects that I have in mind ultimately need more hands on deck in order to get done. Like a greater budget for collections would be, always nice, but there's only so much that a department of 2 people can get done, even no matter how much money you give them. So more bodies would be great.
Well, that's fantastic. I feel the same way. I feel that we librarians, there's never enough of us. And so, yes, definitely more FTEs. I would love to, invite more people to be in our field, especially in medical librarianship, but also in academic librarianship as well. We definitely need more for the work that we do. Oh, I like this. Terry says her genie wish would be greater support and funding for open access worldwide. I agree. I think that's the next big hurdle for us as well for collections. Well, it's 1 o'clock now, and there's been some conversation about unsubs. So I really encourage you to check out if that session as well. That was the other day, and continue the dialogue as well on the Pathables page. I want to thank you all for coming to this session, our 20th Lively Lunch. I hope that we have many, many more. I hope to definitely, Ramona and I will be at the 30th. 25th and the 30th. That's the goal here. And Ashley White would like to say that Duties has a new quarterly service called Duties Special Topics List. And it's a curated list put together by librarians. And she's put the link in the chat box, and she encourages you to take a look. So thank you very much for sharing, Ashley. So if there's no more questions, thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon wherever you are in the world. And I hope maybe next year or the year after, we'll be able to see each other in person at the Charleston conference. And I would really like to thank our panel today, Ramona Kabulis, Rena, Matthew, Katina, and Nicole. And thank you very much for the support from Rittenhouse. That is very gracious of them, again, to support us in another wonderful, lively lunch.